Falik, and I believe that everybody has the potential to find and live their passion. I lead a San Francisco-based nonprofit called Global Citizenry, which reimagines the transition from high school to college as a unique opportunity to unlock a young person's potential. Each year, we recruit and train a diverse core of high school graduates and support them as apprentices in Asia, Africa, and Latin America during a bridge year before college. Because we know that young people who have opportunities to learn about themselves in the world approach college, careers, and their lives with passion and with a true sense of purpose. So why do I do what I do? When I was 18, I called the Peace Corps on the phone. I was hungry to do something outside of the bounds of a classroom. And the Peace Corps says, little girl, go to college, we'll see you in 4 years. And the irony that in this country at age 18, your only option is military service, if you're interested in doing some form of global service, and that you have to wait until after college, typically, to join the Peace Corps, doesn't make very much sense. So I was frustrated, but determined, and I found myself spending a year in Latin America. I went to Brazil with backpack, essentially, lived in an apartment and found a job working with street children, and then I found myself in Latin America in a small community, a rural community, living with a family, working in a school, and by the end of my time there, I had worked with the local community to set up their first library, which is what you see here. The experience was so deeply formative. It was so much more profound than anything I ever had learned in my classroom experience that I have committed my entire professional life to answering one question, which is, what would the world look like if every high school graduate had opportunities to immerse themselves in the developing world as a prerequisite for admission to college? So what's the problem we're trying to solve? We've all got a sense that our schools aren't doing a great job of preparing young people for success in college or in careers, but the statistics are staggering. Fully 1/3 of college freshmen don't come back for a second year. On average, it takes kids 6 years to get through 4-year institutions. And if you happen to be low income, minority, or first in your family to go to college, your chance of getting through in 6 years, 8%. Last year, the New York Times published a study that demonstrated that stress levels among college freshmen around the country were at an all-time high. And as I travel the country talking to college presidents and admissions deans, I hear the same thing over and over, which is that kids arrive on campus not prepared for what they encounter, not having the maturity or resilience it takes to take full advantage of higher education. But what doesn't make it to the headlines is that this problem is not just among those who are traditionally considered to be at risk of dropping out. Dr. Madeline Levine, in a recent book, The Price of Privilege, outlines how the problems of dropout and stress are actually pandemic among kids growing up with material advantage. And she describes how stress has skyrocketed at the same time as self-esteem plummeting among kids who you wouldn't expect to have problems when they get to college. So, as if that weren't enough, we're also underpreparing kids for life and careers in a globalized world. 9% of Americans, English-speaking Americans, speak a second language, and that's in comparison to 54% of our European peers. 50% of congressional leaders don't have a passport. Isn't it time that holding a passport was a basic requirement for holding public office in this country? 1% of Americans will never meet anybody who's lived in extreme poverty. And nearly 2/3 of business executives say that college graduates come out without the skills they really need to thrive in a global economy. So what is needed? What is missing? So we can look at this list, and it's pretty intuitive that there are a core set of characteristics that set us up to know how to cope, how to deal, how to navigate. But if we're really focused on solutions that happen inside the classroom where we're teaching to the test, how in the world can we expect that kids are developing grit, developing empathy, developing cross-cultural abilities? So global citizenry exists to address these challenges. Each year, we recruit and train a diverse core of high school graduates from across the country. We're very proud that in our first 3 years, over 80% of our fellows have received some level of financial aid from us. They're admitted along the same timeline as they would to be admitted to college. They request a deferral from the school, and then they join us. They spend the summer mobilizing hometown supporters, raising money, and then they come for a fall training at Stanford that focuses on social innovation, authentic leadership, global development. From there, they travel in teams to their country posts, and the first month is an intensive language immersion across cultural orientation. And then they journey out to their homestays, their communities, in vehicles that look like this, and it may or may not look like how you arrived for your freshman year. They spend the next 6 months living with a family, participating in the ins and outs of daily life, and working as apprentices on local projects in education, public health, the environment, technology. So here we have Victoria, teaching primary school in a village in Senegal. Peter, who was training kids to use computers in a mobile school in Ecuador. Madeline, working in agriculture in a Millennium Village project in Senegal. And Mariela, who was working to measure the impact of fuel-efficient stoves in a community in Brazil. All of the fellows are trained to be citizen journalists. They see that their responsibility is bigger than just their own experience. They all have flip video cameras and have access to our blog so that they can be telling their stories in a way that can influence others who may or may not have opportunities to travel. By May, we're proud to say we'll have 100 alumni who've moved through the first 3 years of our program. We now have freshmen and sophomores in college, and we're very committed to tracking their trajectories as they go. And we've been delighted to find, and not so surprised, that 100% feel better prepared than their peers who've come straight from high school. 94% are proficient in a new language, and 100% are continuing to study a language. And 63% are already holding leadership roles as freshmen. In short, these kids arrive ready to go. They've got a roadmap for what they're doing there. They're not trying to get their requirements out of the way, but they're actually there to answer a core set of questions that have developed very organically through their own real-world experience. These kids are calm during midterms and finals. They are self-aware enough to not succumb to peer pressure. They are ready to go and to make us all proud. So it's really just the beginning for all of this. In the next 5 years, we plan to have 1,000 fellows move through the program. We're partnering broadly with unlikely partners, from Twitter to Nicholas Kristof to CARE in the field, the Millennium Village projects, Nike Foundation have all been early supporters. And the concept is, how do we move beyond a boutique program or something that is exclusive and selective just for a small number of kids, to something that someday would be a common expectation? So that someday admissions letters go out and say, congrats, we'll see you after your global citizen year. And employers down the line will look at your resume and say, wait a second, why did you go straight from high school to college? And we're already starting to see the momentum build. So our students who are on college campuses, this is a Facebook thread from last fall, just 1 week into her freshman year, Clara posted that she was ready to start mobilizing others on campus around the idea of a gap year, or a bridge year as we like to call it, because you're not falling into a gap, you're actually bridging successfully from one experience to the other. And within hours, there was a flurry of activity from other alums at colleges across the country who wanted to do the same and follow suit. So the next frontier for us is really about engaging the higher education community. How do we partner with colleges and universities to make this the new norm? There's some schools that are out ahead on this. So Princeton University has a new global bridge year program where they're encouraging up to 10% of their incoming class to do a year of global service before they enroll. Very interesting. Sets a terrific precedent. And other schools are doing similar things to be out ahead and encouraging more kids to take a year off before they start. So before I close here, I wanted to actually bring a real story to you all from the field. This is also from TEDxAshokaU, one of our fellows last year, who's from Los Angeles, now a freshman at Barnard. She wrote this on our blog. It's called The Overnight. Tonight, around 2 a.m., a woman screamed. We jumped off our sleeping mats and found a patient in the waiting room who was more of a girl than a woman. We brought her into the delivery room. 3 hours later, she's still screaming in contractions, and the doctor has finally arrived to evaluate the problem. The baby was backward. The plan? To pull it out. I help hold down the girl's knees while the doctors attempt to bring a being into life. Later, when the baby's newborn cries had died down, we transported the girl to the floor where she'd be more comfortable as she waited for her husband to arrive. As I walked past her to get some water, her hand tightened momentarily around my ankle, but I didn't look back. When I returned, I saw that the hand that had touched me was lying in the cold dirt. I knew it wouldn't reach out for me again. Everything is not all right. It is not all right to fill in charts with births and deaths like fractions. January, 32 births, 27 still alive. 27 out of 32. Something's familiar about those numbers. Those are the numbers you see in the nonprofit pamphlets. Those are the statistics we use to define development. Am I digesting this loss with the preconceptions of a World Bank report? Am I still, after 4 months here, looking for numbers to tell me what to feel? As if they could show you what it feels like to have a phantom grip on your ankle. As if they could say what it was like to look at that baby and still feel a ray of hope. I refuse to be numb again. I should have looked at her. I should have looked her straight in the eyes when she reached out for recognition, and I should have let her know that she was more than a number and that I would remember her. I've been ripped away from my structured perceptions, just as her baby was ripped from her. But I am grateful. Her name was Kumba, like me. She was 17, and she changed everything. So Clara has found her purpose, far from a classroom, in the real world. And one of my favorite quotes, this idea, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who've come alive. Now, everyone deserves to come alive, and it is our responsibility to make sure that this is possible. Thank you.